in general, I'm just saying Black men, Black women, Black people, the world needs you. So don't be afraid to go to medical school. Don't be afraid to go to pharmacy school. Don't be afraid to get a PhD. Don't be afraid to be a global researcher. Like, you are needed and you're very, very valued. And when you get there, stay there. You are valued and you belong there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the How Do You Medicine podcast, where we talk to healthcare professionals doing medicine their way. So starting off season 2, we're going to start off this first episode blazing in celebration of Black History Month. We have an illustrious panel of Black men in healthcare. We're going to be talking about their experiences to get into the space that they got to now and just throughout their journey to occupy the space that they currently occupy. So without further ado, let me introduce this great panel of men. So first we have Dr. Torian Easterling, who currently is the first Deputy Commissioner and Chief Equity Officer at New York City Health Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Hi, Dr. Easterling. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here. And next we have Dr. Donaldson Conserve, who is currently a biobehavioral health scientist, as well as a professor at George Washington University in DC. Hi, Dr. Conserve.
Hello. Thank you.
And of course, we have, keeping this varied panel, we have Dr. Victor Emmanuel. He's a board certified pharmacist hailing from the South. Hi, Dr. Emmanuel. Hello, guys. I'm so happy that you guys are here in this panel. We're going to be talking about various things. But first, let's just start off with some statistics, right? So the American Medical Association says that less than 3% of physicians in general are Black males. And then when we start talking about, male researchers or statistics, talking about researchers or professors, they said that less than 2% of the full-time faculty that are professors are even Black males in the first place. And then getting into stats about, pharmacists, the good news is they've actually, contrary to everything else, has actually seen a growth in number of pharmacists or Black pharmacists. But funny enough, majority of that growth is contributed to more women coming into pharmacy. So I really wanted to start, touching about, on these statistics. So I wanted to kind of bring Dr. Easterling in. Why do you think that is? Is it because of like a lack of representation? Or what? Like, why do you think these numbers are so low for Black males specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and it's a question that folks have been trying to answer for quite some time. But I think we have to sort of lay out all of the facts, and I think you sharing some of the outcomes understand that there have been multiple sort of systems at play that have led to why we see low numbers of Black men in healthcare professions. I think it starts with overall just how the system sees Black men. We started off in this country not being full human beings, and so this idea of being authentic, all the things that we bring to the space, how we think about health and healing and wellness, is not always reflected. We can go back to the early 1900s in the Flexner Report and the intentionality to decrease the number of institutions that focused on educating Black folks. And so, this isn't about individual choice. This is about systems making sure that they reflect the diversity of this country, the diversity of thought, the diversity of the communities that are in this country. And so we can think about not just medical schools, but also, as you talked about, pharmacy, nursing, but also thinking about community services, right? And so we weren't in medical school, so we had to choose paths like doulas and midwives and thinking about community health workers. And many of those professions weren't even valued, right? You had to really fight to even be in those spaces. So I think all in all, we have to think about how institutions, how we can think about professional organizations begin to do some of the repair to the harm that has been done over the years. We've seen American Medical Association identify the ways in which they have caused this harm, namely the Flexner report, namely how they have disinvested in medical schools that are focused on Black and brown folks. And then we have to think about like the educational curriculum and how it's set up to support Black boys in general. And this idea of belonging, right? You know, if I go through school, you know, who's making sure that they're embracing all of me? You know, the pains and the harms that I've already experienced, and making sure that I can complete my school. So it's a lot to unpack there.
I agree, and I'm bringing you in, Dr. Emmanuel, because you kind of have a little unique experience too, because this is actually your second career, right? So Dr. Emmanuel is actually an accountant first, changed careers, also changed countries. So you had a whole different career in one different country, and then came in. So now, you know, being a pharmacist, what changes have you seen in terms of maybe your experience jumping, you know, from one career to another, and just, you know, changing your whole maybe mindset, even like being, you know, becoming a pharmacist in the United States?
All right, thank you. So in my situation, it's a little different because, granted, I was not born in the United States, and you know, I got my certification in accounting and my degree in accounting and everything in the United Kingdom before I moved back to the United States, and then went to pharmacy school. Now, seeing all of these things coming into the United States to go to pharmacy school, you know, I always try to see it from the outside because I understand that I've not had the full experience of all Black men in the United States, and I have to always wear that lens. But also, when I look at all these things, I come to understand that, like just as Dr. Easterling was talking about, there is an issue with, in my opinion, I believe, like the mass incarceration of young Black males. That plays a whole role. You and I know, before you get into medical school, before you get into pharmacy school, there were a whole lot of background checks that goes into this. There are a whole lot of things that goes into this. Like if you have any kind of records whatsoever, you are not gonna get admitted into any of these programs. And if a kid of say 16, 17, 15, when they don't even know anything, get involved in anything at all and get some sort of a record, by the time they know what's going on in the world and they want to make a decision to pursue healthcare or pursue some of this higher education, the damage has already been done. The door has already been closed in their face because there is that record that's standing there. So, you know, that is a big barrier. And now, again, back to me coming in from a different profession and coming in from a different country to move into the United States to become a pharmacist and everything. Now, the barriers there, it depends. It's very relative. But for me, it was more like a determination of mine to, you know, pursue what I believed in, what I feel that will help people, and not just help people, also help myself in the process, basically. So that's just my general view and my general experience in you know, in the whole conversation.
Perfect. And what I want to actually bring Dr. Conserve in, because Dr. Conserve actually started an organization which is specifically for Black males and researchers, BMPRC. So Dr. Conserve, talk to us more about that collective, and were the statistics one of the reasons you even, you know, started the collective in the first place? Because we just, you know, heard only 2% of full-time professors are Black males.
Thank you. And thank you to the other panelists who spoke and shared their experiences that touched on different aspects of why there are so many fewer Black male or Blacks in general in medicine or as professors. My reasons for developing the Black Male Professors Initiative stem from a few experiences. One is that when I was an undergraduate student, I had the opportunity to lead or to be part of the science organization of minority students at Queens College. I started as a member and then eventually went to become a recruiter, the vice president, and then eventually the president. So the experiences I had from that group and the community that I benefited from, and the resources that were available to us, either from members sharing with each other, or the advisor sharing different summer internship opportunities really made a difference in my experience as a college student. And then eventually now as a professor, when I realized there was this lack of community, at least for Black male professors. And particularly I was in a program at NYU in the summer of 2016, where there may have been 30 fellows for this program that is designed to help minority professors, female or males, to become interested in sleep-related research. And the director of the program said throughout the introduction that they have a hard time recruiting Black men for the program. And I was the only Black man in the program that year. So as he was sharing this, I started to think about how could I help? How could I potentially use the experience that I have from being a recruiter, a vice president, and a president of a science organization of minority student when I was an undergraduate student. So I decided to, first of all, I created a group on Facebook to just tell individuals about the program at NYU, and then having members join to become part of this group on Facebook called Black Male Professors, Researchers, and Doctors. And then it kind of, gained some momentum, and that was back in 2016. But then with the George Floyd incident that happened as well, I started to think more. I went back to the space of, okay, we see the image that is, that are being portrayed of Black men, being killed, and not even with George Floyd only, but so many others that have happened over the years. And I also started thinking about what can I do beyond just maybe recruiting for this program at NYU, and really wanted to now go from just providing a space to recruit, but a space for community, but to also have a group of Black male professors. Like even me as a Black male professor, I felt like I didn't really have that community of Black male professors to begin with. I had, a friend here and there, but I started to think what maybe other people's experiences may be, and how could we potentially come together to support one another, but also to provide role models for younger Black men when they can, see us as Black male professors, because I don't think younger Black men who may not be exposed to a Black male professor is gonna think, oh, the first thing they wanna do is to become a Black male professor. So I wanted to provide a space to support Black male professors, PhD students, undergraduate students who are thinking about research, and to be able to tap into that resource at different levels, so that people, especially the younger generations, can be like, oh yeah, I know this group for Black male professors. I've seen a Black male professor. I know what they do. They're not maybe as senior and older.
Not what you typically see.
Exactly, right?
Right.
Like
you don't have to be
white.
like, older.
Usually when you think about a professor, you might think of an older individual, but there are very cool, young, hip Black male professors who are doing amazing research that are doing it maybe in silos. So it's not maybe getting showcased in the same way that it could. So that's one of the purposes of the Black male professors and researchers collective.
So before we forget, go ahead and drop. I know you guys have a website and things where people can get more information. So go ahead and let us know where people can go to find more information about this wonderful collective.
Thank you very much. So the first page we have is the website called You can type bmprcinitiative.com, and it will take you to our main website. And then we also have a YouTube page, which I'm very excited, a YouTube channel, which I'm very excited about, because before the YouTube page for the Black Male Professors Initiative, I went to YouTube and typed Black Male Professors just to see what comes up. And there was maybe one news clip of a Black male professor being interviewed because he was denied tenure at a university, and then maybe another panel. So I've seen there were a lot more Black male teachers videos, but nothing to really do what we are planning to do with the Black Male Professors Initiative YouTube channel, to really showcase different Black male professors doing exciting work, but also to share the journey of how they became interested in pursuing a PhD, what kind of challenges they may have had, what kind of sources they may have consulted for funding to support, their PhD program, or how to find a postdoctoral fellowship, and then eventually securing a tenure track position at a, research one university or a teaching university. So these are the goals we have for the YouTube channel, which we've had two interviews already, and I have 2 more lined up. Speaking with an associate dean tomorrow at Yale University. So I'm very excited about, that potential interview. And then we have an Instagram page, which is the BMPRC initiative. But if you type Black Male Professors on Instagram, then you'll see our page. And we have a LinkedIn, Twitter.
So you guys are social media, like, presence is there, trying to increase, like, both awareness is great work, both increasing both awareness and presentation. Yes. So actually you touched on something very important when you were saying you went to that summer program and you were like the only Black male professor there. So I want to bring Dr. Emmanuel and Dr. Easterling in. Is there ever been a time when either of you gentlemen feel like the representative, like I'm representing whether Black men or like I'm representing like the Black race, whether professionally or otherwise?
Yeah, I'll kick off. Yeah, the short answer is yes. And I think whether through your educational journey or through your professional role, certainly could feel like that. Certainly at conferences, oftentimes you may, like I had the privilege of, receiving some awards to go to conferences, and, I was the only person of color, right? Like, not just thinking about a Black person, but just a person of color who won to receive the award. And as I was showing up at multiple sessions for the conference, it was very clear that there was very little diversity at the conference. So, it's just how you are able to access these spaces, I think, are really important. And I think it's important for us to think about, the information and the things that we're able to do to bring into that space. But, diversity isn't just about race and ethnicity, right? It's also about thought. It's also bringing in the experiences, right? Because, the Black community is not a monolithic community. We got to think about the ways in which, you come into this country, you're born into this country. Think about the experiences of, from Midwest to South to even in the North. And all of those things sort of color the ways in which our Blackness shows up, which is creative and innovative and amazing. But we do have those nuances and those differences that allow us to bring flavor to the work that we do. And I think it's really important that we provide that space, but that we also are very clear. We do not speak for the entire Black community, right? No one does. And what we can bring into conversations are structured ways to engage community members, making sure that those voices, particularly those who are marginalized, those who are often left to feel invisible because of you think about economic situations, you think about their educational journey, you think about lack of healthcare insurance. We have to bring those voices into the spaces that we are in, because although we are people of color, we are Black, we're also privileged, right? And we have to think about what our privilege allows us to do is make space and room for the voices that are left invisible.
I love it. Like, we're not a monolith. We do, we don't represent the whole thing, but we do our part. So I'll let you go ahead and chime in, Dr. Emmanuel.
Oh yeah, thank you. So now, just in addition to what Dr. Easterling says, like my experience, what it makes me think back to was my time in pharmacy school, where I went to a PWI, that's predominantly white institution. And I happened to be, out of a class of 100, almost 100 students, I happened to be one of the few Black people in the program. And and that was where I started my locks journey, okay?
Okay, yes, okay.
So now, prior to my locks, I had a big afro. I've always loved my hair. So I just, had to figure out how to manage it because I loved having hair. So I had quite a few situations where a white professor pulls me aside and be like, "Hey, what do you think you're doing with your hair? Like, can you can't you see how other people, your other black people cut their hair nice and neat and stuff like that?
Wow.
Stuff like that. They make such slight comments about that. So for me, it did not make me feel bad about having my hair. It kind of gave me more resolve to keep my journey. But this is more because, when you take a look at what Black people are depicted in the media, how they look, and how they behave, and all that stuff. Most Black people they show on TV, for example, for committing a crime or something, I believe they intentionally show the ones that probably, have some of these stereotypical looks, like, have locks or have this kind of tattoo or have this kind of behavior or something like that. But, for me, it became a mission of mine to make other Black people know that you can still have locks and still be successful in this country. So you can still look a certain way and still be successful. Your looks does not determine the kind of impact you can make in this society. And the sky is the limit. Just put your mind to what you want to do, stay focused, do what you have to do, get your degree, get your money, get everything going, and everything will be all right. So, so in those instances where I've had some of those conversations with some professors and some other colleagues and stuff, just about my hair, in those moments, I feel like, yeah, maybe it was just clear to me that this is exactly how they see every other Black person. So if you look like this, they don't expect anything good to come out from you, and that is not true.
Yeah, and then it sounds like what you're saying is great. Your discrimination become an opportunity for me to kind of rewrite any biases that you may have. It's a great perspective, right? Because I feel like many others would respond differently, So actually, to that end, let me ask you guys, and it's kind of open to anyone, has there ever been a time where the opposite happened, where you feel like you have to, shrink yourself in order to, make your counterparts, whether, white or otherwise, more comfortable, whether, for whatever reason?
Okay, I can kick off with that. Yeah. That's totally fine. Now, I'll give you some examples. So, like, when I fresh out of pharmacy school, you have to get a job, right? So
yes, one of those
now, so just like I was saying about how I went through pharmacy school and everything, and have to deal with my, my appearance situation and everything. Now I'm in the real world. I have to get a job, and I'm being interviewed by all of these white people. Which is not a bad thing, okay? It's not a bad thing. But, I was being interviewed by all these people, and many of my interviews were a no, for whatever reason. It wasn't like it, they never tell you this. But for me, at some point, I begin to think, is it because of how I look? I have to start looking inward and being like, is this my fault? Because most of these interviews, I feel like I did really great. I feel like we had great conversations, and they confirmed, like, you will be a good asset to this business and to this company, to this whatever, to this facility. But they end up not returning a call, or not, eventually a few weeks later, you get that, the dreaded email, like, yeah, thank you for everything, but
we appreciate it, but also no.
We appreciate it. So, yeah. Gotcha. So it kind of made me, a couple of the interviews I had to go to, I had to be very much intentional with how I, styled my. One thing I do know was that I was not going to cut my hair for any reason. Okay, I know I was not going to, remove my locks for any reason, but it made me more intentional on how I styled my hair, how I, I actually did clean up my facial hair for a couple of those interviews, just to fit in, basically, to feel like, maybe this might give me a better chance, So yeah, that's my experience. But of course, eventually I just didn't pay attention to that anymore. And then when, eventually I got a job, and since then, like, I've not been short of offers. I get offers every week, almost like every week since then. So it's just what it is. So.
We love it. I love it. Dr. Easterling, you're going to say something.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think, for the audience, certainly we're sharing our perspective, and there are lots of, I think, opportunities that in this, I get what we're sharing, there are strengths and there's like beauty in all of this struggle, right? That we also want to lift up because there are challenges. And I think that's what you're hearing from us in this educational journey, in the professional journey that we have. But it's also about reclaiming our story and changing the narrative. And I think that's why we're here as well. And so the platform is amazing. This idea about shrinking ourselves, so one of the things that I've been able to do, through my gifts and the opportunity that I have is support this organization called Young Doctors DC. Co-founded an organization over 10 years ago with a group of brothers, all in healthcare profession, because we knew that was really important to really engage young Black boys. This idea of belonging is so important because we talk about representation, which is why we're here, how we're reflecting that back into the younger generation so that they can see a path forward. Because one, we don't necessarily have to force ourselves to shrink. This society already does it for us in a lot of different ways, right? This country was already established on already shrinking us, right? We weren't even made to seem whole. And so, what we talk to our students about is this idea of belonging, right? We belong to family, we belong to community. There is a history that we belong to as well, and we have to often tap into it so we can understand our powers and our strengths and embrace it and be able to step into it so that we can move forward in the direction that we want to move forward into. So, I remember in medical school, rounding I was on my medicine rotation, and I remember being called a boy. I'm 6'5", and I was 6'5".
Right. For those who don't know, Torian is.
So it's just like at that point, I'm not 12 years old, right? I'm not 5'1". I'm very much a grown man, and I'm being called a boy in medical school. And so, as Brother Emmanuel was saying, there's these physical characteristics that where folks are going to try to test you to try to shrink you. And then as you think about how we talk about Blackness in society, there's an intentionality to sort of shrink who we are. And I remember a conversation we do sort of case reviews, and folks are talking about a patient. And I remember calling out that this patient, which is already known, that background is the person is from Jamaica. And so, we were talking about language and patois. And so the person, the professor said, oh, patois isn't nothing. That's not a real language. Not recognizing like the cultural relevance of like what they're talking about. Right. And so, there's intentionality of trying to shrink us. And so I think it's really important to talk about, yes, there are times where we'll try to make ourselves small in spaces, but we gotta own who we are. We gotta step into these spaces and really use our voice, show up, talk about, all the beauty of all of our communities and who we are, because it's literally life or death. And I say that because we see that with COVID-19, right? Like, our Blackness has been not only attacked because of George Floyd being murdered, but as you think about the number of people who died, Black and Latinos, 2 to 3 times more likely to die. And so if we're to really talk about our community, protect our community, we need to make sure that the data even shows up where we can identify who's most at risk by exposure and all of these things. And so I think that's really important.
So then that actually brings me to my next question, because just, Dr. Easterling, you said about, standing up. Standing up takes a couple of things, right? It takes courage, it takes time, it takes, overcoming a level of maybe being anxious or fearful. So I want to ask you, actually, Dr. Conserve, as you were talking about your collective, was there ever a time when you were like, do I? Because you could, you are, a busy, guy from, writing your grant to, of course, your responsibilities just to university and things like that. You could have been like, me just being me, who I am, and being a Black male professor, like that's good enough. You could have just done that, but you've decided, you know what, I want to do something more concrete. I want to actually create this thing. So, talk to us about, the challenges with that and how you overcame it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. I as I shared earlier, it's been a journey since 2016 that I started with wanting to recruit individuals for this program specifically. So I was not yet in a space to think whether, being a professor or what time it would take to do something more elaborate in the future. I really just had the drive to try to help. And just the same way when I was an undergraduate student, if there's an opportunity, I try to get information to people who may be able to use it, like to you, Dr. Joseph, right? Back in Queens College, I shared some information with you that you ended up taking great advantage of, and the rest is history.
That's
so
right.
It's the same way when it came time for this opportunity. I said, I know there are people who will benefit from this community of Black successful scholars, and Facebook would be one way to, get the information to as many individuals as possible. So I just did that. And as time went by, I realized that perhaps it's, there's an opportunity to do something even more than just recruiting individuals for this NYU program. And again, the drive was again to just respond to that call. So I think it's, it feels like it's a calling in some ways that I just respond to. The challenges that I think may have come up were related to, having the funding to pay for someone to design the website, to put the contents together. So being strategic in how I use the funds that I had access to as a professor to support the development of the website, and then eventually thinking about how to increase the visibility on the social media platform, because that's where a lot of Black male and even just Black people in general who are active on Twitter, like you have Black academics, Black Twitter. So there are all these opportunities that I had to start tapping into. And actually, I would say being involved or like leading this collective has forced me to step out of my comfort zone, because before that I was not active on Twitter. I was not really active on LinkedIn. I don't have a website before this platform. I had never built a website. I didn't even build a website for my own research lab that I could have done in the past. And I thought I remember deciding that if I'm going to build a website, I don't want it to be serving my lab purpose just to share about my research and how to get involved. Like that can happen without a website. Like it's just one, I feel like it's very narrow. So I feel like this website, it gave me more reason. I had more of a drive to actually step out of my comfort zone and step into these spaces that I was actually shying away from. And as you said, I could have decided, you know what, I'm okay. This is not going to help my career per se. Like I don't need to have a website. I don't need to do this collective, because that's not what I'm evaluated on an annual basis.
Right.
So I think that another concern was perhaps how this could backfire, right? Because we do work in institutions that are predominantly white, like George Washington University is a predominantly white institution. And as much as a lot of individuals are very supportive of increasing diversity and equity and all these great initiatives, it doesn't guarantee that everyone is going to view these initiatives the same way. Like we have, for example, affirmative action is being challenged right now as we speak, right? So not everyone is going to be on board, but I felt that I had reached a space in my career where I was comfortable enough with delivering what I had to deliver to be successful and get promoted to receive tenure, or was in the process of receiving tenure, and thought that this is the time. If, they say when you receive tenure, this is the opportunity for you to like branch out and do some other activities, engage in different opportunities that you may have shied away from before you receive tenure. So I thought this was the time to do it. And it's, been going very slowly, and that's because, again, it's not my main career, but
it takes time.
It takes
right?
time
To build things.
learning.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly. So I'm learning to give, to be patient with myself and learn and grow, and not think that, it's going to happen overnight. But I think it's a very exciting platform. I'm thinking about every opportunity of how to spread the information, reach the individuals who actually can benefit from these YouTube videos and so forth and so on. So, yeah.
And so actually I wanted to, and then thank Dr. Conserve, he talks about the summer program. When I was a wee little undergrad, Dr. Conserve was the president of an organization that gave me some information. I did the summer program there. And then from that program, I got into medical school, and here I am. But like that, this is the purpose of, just living your life the way that you're supposed to, or more intentionally, right? And I'm sure both Dr. Emmanuel and Dr. Easterling, there's been things that you did that if you didn't, Dr. Conserve talks about calling. If you didn't respond to that call, a lot of others would not benefit for it. And throughout your journeys, I'm sure you've had, challenges. And one unique great thing about our panel is that everyone on this panel is a girl dad, right? So being a father is a whole different balancing act, because you have your careers, you have be a dad, and there's other things you have to do, and you don't there's things you do, and the reach outs that you do, you don't have to do. So talk to me about what's been the most challenging thing for you in your journey thus far, and how do you find balance? Anyone can start. You can start, Dr. Easterling. I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years have been challenging for everybody, and if anyone tells you different, I don't believe them. Check their temperature.
Right.
Everything popped off in 2020 with this pandemic, and God willing, we never experienced anything like this, and so this is sort of a once in a lifetime experience. And for those of us in healthcare, we've been at the center of it. Whether we are shaping policy, whether we're delivering patient care, I mean, we have been on the front lines, literally saving lives, all while doing it and trying to just, also support our families. And so my daughter was born March 1st, 2020.
Pandemic,
Pandemic, right. At the very start. New York City, the very first case was March 1st, 2020.
Oh, wow.
And so, as you think about, sort of the arc of the pandemic, and also trying to rear a child, like these are all important moments, right? The development is moving really fast. And so trying to balance being in New York City in the epicenter at one of the largest public health agencies, also serving as, the equity officer, and then also trying to get home and take care of family and do all those things. So yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. But you talked about a little bit of the resiliency and the factors that really help. And so obviously family is really important, extended family is really important. And being from North Jersey, really having the support of, parents and siblings. And so that was really important. And also it sort of helps with the balance, because, clearly you can't do everything, and really having family is important. You also understanding, your limitation. We were working 70 hours, 80 hours, and sometimes 100 hours a week, because that's just what, the work called for. Being on site, most people working from home, and people are still advocating for working from home. But
right.
Most healthcare workers can't do that, right? Like, it's not even possible. So understanding, you're really stepping into a moment where you get to shine, but you also have to understand the risk as well. And so I think it's important that during peacetime, right? Like we're not there yet. The pandemic is still happening. We are on a downward trend, and really we hope that that continues, that the cases bottom out, hospitalizations bottom out. But I think it's important that we continue to find ways that like support ourselves, support our overall well-being, whether that's exercise, finding a therapist, et cetera. All these people know, because sleep certainly isn't something that we have a luxury of oftentimes.
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Emmanuel?
Yeah, so being in the pharmacy, we are your number one stop for getting the vaccine, basically. And for the most part, getting tested as well.
Right.
So now, during the pandemic, about 6 months ago or so, I was offered a managerial position, which I took, and I've been in that managerial position ever since. And that kind of compounds to everything else, having to not just going in and taking care of, the public, but also having to do other things behind the scenes and all, compliance. Compliance is a big thing in pharmacy because, companies can lose money for that. And, there's a lot of things that goes into that. You could be shut down for non-compliance. And, so having to do all of that, it's really, really challenging, really. And of course, just like my other brothers can say, I can tell, managing people is hard, literally. So having to combine managing people, delivering patient care, and also dealing with other background issues as a manager, and it just makes everything, it just compounds everything. And almost on a daily basis, we have to deal with a patient that comes in and, loses it in the pharmacy, or just, have some that wants something that we cannot provide, or expect too much from us. And, and sometimes you just have to close the pharmacy because you don't have the staff to work the pharmacy. Literally.
Wow.
So those are some of the things we have to deal with all the time. And it's been really challenging, but we are still striving. And, in the midst of all these challenges, you, like Dr. Easterling said, you have to find a way to take care of yourself. That's the number one thing. Take care of yourself, because you cannot take care of another person if you're not well yourself.
Right.
So that has been the big thing. And, and I encourage all our listeners and everybody, like, always take care of yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically, your health, everything. Be your best self so you can actually be yourself for other people. So, and that's it. I cannot emphasize that enough.
And so actually that I wanted to touch on that, because I think that oftentimes are things people don't really, see, the behind the scenes things, whether you're working with the health department or whether you're working as a professor, maybe people see, in the classroom, providing knowledge and all that stuff, but they don't know the behind the scenes, maybe how hard you work with, getting that grant, making sure that, things go off without a hitch when it comes to like a research project. I know Dr. Conserve, you mentor, a number of students, what does that mean in terms of like time, right? Again, Dr. Conserve has a little toddler as well, so, all of that comes into play. And I think that sometimes, things that you see outwardly are so visible that sometimes behind the scenes can be forgotten. And so I wanted to ask you, gentlemen, what is one thing that you wish the world knew about Black men in healthcare? Like, you were just like, if more people knew this, that would be great. Or realized if more people realize this, that'd be great.
Let me take this one to start off with, because it's since I didn't speak for the last question. One, and it's not necessarily related to the stress and the challenges, because again, with my mission, I feel with the BMPRC initiative is to highlight the positive aspect of being a Black male professor as well, while describing what some of the challenges may be that are probably already maybe maybe thought about. Like, yeah, it's hard to go get a bachelor's degree, get a PhD, run the research projects, apply for the grants, deal with the disappointments of not getting a job after you finish your PhD or not getting those grants. I think those are probably common for, at least as a professor, right? You have other ethnicities and races who are also going through similar challenges, and some may, be worse than others. But fortunately, I have had a great career. I've had great mentors. I've had a very exciting career. I work in global health. I chose to work in global health because of the internship that I completed when I was an undergraduate student, and that allowed me to go to South Africa. And this same internship was being directed by a Black male professor who was himself a global health researcher, spending the summers in France every summer, right? It's not compromised. He doesn't, as you talk about taking care of yourself, like every summer he's in France, also engaging in collaboration with French research. Like I was also in France with him. The first time I got to leave the United States was to go to France and spend the summer there with him. And I remember thinking, wow, so there's a career I could potentially pursue that would allow me to not only have a very, like, I think, suitable career, but you could travel, you could meet researchers in different countries. So I started to think about what that would look like for me. And slowly and surely, if I'm an undergraduate student, I was like, wow, I know there's medicine, there's, becoming a medical doctor. I was a pre-med. But then this global health research track really just stayed with me to think that, because, and I think if we think about, not even now, people like to travel, right? You have the jet Black travel groups, like where people are promoting Black people traveling, right? And I think it's amazing, right? And this opportunity that I was part of is still funded by the National Institute of Health, with
nice.
the objective of promoting, of encouraging Black or underrepresented students to travel and gain global health or study abroad experiences, because they know that not as many underrepresented students are able to afford these opportunities. But I was able to tap into this as an undergraduate student, and now I'm a faculty mentor. I've been able to take students through a similar program to Tanzania, and right now we're interviewing to take students to Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya. So I think these are some of the exciting points that I would like someone to know about being a Black male professor in global health, working in the space that I am, because not every Black male professor is going to have the same experience. But
Right.
If you are interested in global health and you are able to tap into the right opportunities, there are so much funding just dedicated to recruit underrepresented students. Whether you're interested in global health or basic science, you can start as early as a high school student to look or knock on doors and ask for these opportunities that will literally provide funding for you, instead of working. Like I was working at KFC, Pathmark. I was an emergency medical technician until I tap into these funded programs that will pay you monthly, $900 a month or $1,200 a month to gain research experience.
And cultural, right? And cultural experiences, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Easterling was talking about a colleague of his who really didn't even understand the enormity of what patois is and how important it is to that culture, right?
Yes.
And what Dr.
Cultural
Conserve is talking about, that helps with that.
So I think, beside the challenges, I think every field is going to have their own challenges. But I also want to talk about the wins, the successes that we have had, the excitement that comes with being able to think about, this is a project I want to develop from scratch, and I'm going to write a proposal, and someone is going to review it, and if they like it enough, they'll give me $2 million to do it, or $5 million to do it, right? So these are also opportunities that exist that I think may not be discussed as much, and I want to highlight these exciting things that are happening for Black male professors, and also try to address the challenges that some Black male professors are having until they are able to tap into these opportunities. So that's what I would like to share today.
I think those are great perspectives, right? Like, it's great to talk about the challenges, really, like Dr. Easterling said, it's great to talk about the challenges, obviously, providing a realistic picture, but also celebrate the wins, highlight the wins. I want to bring you in, Dr. Emmanuel, what your perspective on what the world.
Thank you. Now, one thing I want the world to know is, first of all, we are humans, okay? And we worked hard to be where we are, and we belong here. This was not given to us. This was not just thrown to us. We went through the right channels. In fact, we put more work in to get to where we are today. And I just want the world to know that, like, we are just not faking this thing. This is real life. Okay, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, for any Black person out there, any Black man out there thinking of getting into healthcare, going into pharmacy, medical school, physical therapy, whatever doctorate program you choose to go to, just know that the world needs you. And there are lots of people that look like you that are happy and looking forward to meeting somebody like you in healthcare. You could be the reason why they live or die, literally. And I can say this based on my personal experiences, because I've had patients that come in, and when I talk to them, like, there's this thing we call MTM, medication therapy management. Sometimes we have patients come in and we have to go over their medications, see what if they are taking maybe two similar medications or taking too many medications of one and stuff, and try to reconcile all of that. And at the end of that, we try to communicate with their medical provider, their doctors, and be like, hey, this person is taking, for example, they are taking valsartan and hydrochlorothiazide. These are two different medications. And maybe we can get them a combination medication where they just take one instead of take these two different medications and stuff like that. And this kind of help these patients live, stay adherent to their medications, live better lives, and, have less issues with forgetting to take their medicines and stuff. And most of the time I've had, in my experience, most of my Black patients that come to see me, I feel there is that feeling of full trust between the both of us, that we are doing this for the betterment of the both of us. And I'm not saying this to say that, I don't provide the same service to other races or other people or stuff like that. It's the same service I provide. But for that person, for that Black person that looks like me, sees me, sometimes they have more trust in what I'm telling them than what anybody else is telling them. So, in general, I'm just saying, Black men, Black women, Black people, the world needs you. So don't be afraid to go to medical school. Don't be afraid to go to pharmacy school. Don't be afraid to get a PhD. Don't be afraid to be a global researcher. Like, you are needed and you're very, very valued. And when you get there, stay there. You are valued and you belong there.
I love it. You are valued. You belong. Dr. Easterling? Yeah, right. I was like, yes, snaps. Yes.
I was feeling that. Yeah, two things. One, I'll just say what I need the world, and specifically philanthropic and folks who have the money, is that, we're all working double time. We are either leading programs, pipeline programs, mentoring programs, podcasts to get the word out, and we need money to do this work. We're doing it on our own dime, on our own time, and we need organizations to invest in this work if we're truly going to move the needle in turning the tide and making sure that we're not having this conversation about why there are so few Black men in health professional roles. And so we need the world to know that we need money. And then two, we also need the world to know that that there are Black men in healthcare who are just as committed to fighting against anti-Blackness racism as they are fighting against patriarchy, fighting against homophobic views. And I think that needs to be known because as we think about the structures that we need to change, it's really stemming from racial injustices, but we also know that there are so many intersecting systems of oppression. So it's really important to lift up.
I love it. I love it. And as we're rounding out our podcast episode, which has been amazing, I just have two things I wanted to ask you, gentlemen. Dr. Emmanuel actually touched on it with just in general inspiring others who want to get into healthcare field, right? But I want to ask you gentlemen, maybe there's a little, there's a little young man who is like, you know what, I really feeling what Dr. Emmanuel is saying. I would really love to be a pharmacist, or I'd really love to be a biobehavioral scientist, or I'd really like, man, this guy's, he's the deputy commissioner and he's working for the New York Health Department. Actually, that really speaks to me. I really want to be that. Like, what one piece of advice would you give that young man? That's one. And two, what throughout all this journey, what have you been most proud of? So anyone can kick it off.
I'll tell the young man to check out Young Doctors DC at yddc.org. It is an amazing organization. You're in high school, even younger. It's an organization that has been providing a lot of information and support to young Black boys getting into healthcare. I'm most proud of the conversation that we're having now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people are talking about health disparities and minorities and underrepresented, and we're having a different conversation and being able to show up in an authentic way.
I love it.
That young man to check out the Minority Health International Research Training Program. If you Google for this program, it will provide you a list of different universities that are funded to recruit underrepresented students and provide a summer stipend for them to travel to different countries and work with a research team. Maybe it's in Tanzania, Colombia, Jamaica, wherever you may be interested. Like, for example, I was interested in going to France because I'm originally from Haiti, and I was losing my French because I had lived here for almost a decade and learned English and wasn't speaking French. So when I was in undergrad, I wanted to relearn French, but I didn't want to pay for study abroad. Thankfully, I learned about Minority Health International Research Training Program. And one of the sites was France. So in the pursuit of trying to improve my French, that's how I learned about this program, which had a public health / global health component. And they are funded every year, maybe 12 universities. Right now I'm working with the University of Alabama Minority Health Research Training Program. We are recruiting students for this summer to go to, again, as I mentioned, Jamaica, Kenya, Tanzania. If you are an undergraduate student, a master's student, a medical student, a PhD student, we are recruiting. So please check out, either the University of Alabama MERT program, or it's also known as MERT, or the other universities throughout the United States. And if you want, you can get in touch with me personally. I'm happy to connect, talk about my experiences, and connect anyone who's interested to other topics that I may not be working on, or to other groups. So that's what I would like to say to that young person.
Nice. And I'll have you guys make sure we get you guys' information. And Dr. Conserve, can you say that program name one more time?
Minority Health International Research Training Program is also known as MERT. In I think the most recent funding cycle, they started calling it Minority Health Research Training Program. They took out the international piece because of the fact that now students can just work with a professor in the United States. When COVID happened, a lot of travel were not able to happen. So you can work with a university professor like in the United States. Like I recruited a student last year. He's based in University of Maryland. We have never met in person, but we are working online, and he has 2 papers that he's worked on with me, and so forth and so on. So yeah, Minority Health International Research Training Program, or Minority Health Research Training Program.
Oh, great. Awesome. Dr. Emmanuel.
All right. So when it comes to any advice for anybody looking to pursue healthcare in general, like, just know, I'll say this, it's not going to be an easy journey. You will meet bumps on the way, but when you get through it, it's worth it. focus on your education, focus on all the extracurricular activities you get a chance to, because in most cases, some of those extracurricular activities will be what will push the needle into admitting you into some medical programs or pharmacy programs or whatever program it is. Because it's not just about, make sure you pay attention to keeping your GPA intact, but while keeping your GPA intact, also pay attention to, doing other extracurricular programs. Like, for example, as Dr. Conserve is saying, take those opportunities for research experiences, like reach out to people that know, or, like spend a day with a doctor if you want to go to medical school. Like, reach out to most people that are already practicing in those professions. They will be more than happy to have you come shadow them at least for a day, so you just get an idea of what it is. And as well as your education, as important as it is, extracurricular activities are very, very important. And just keep at the back of your mind that it's hard work, but it's worth it.
And to be a clinical pharmacist, would you then, they would do the same shadowing experience, I think you were saying too. Right?
Pretty much, yes. It's the same thing. Except that if you have to go, actually you don't really need a residency to be a clinical pharmacist, but sometimes it's preferred. So it's one of those things. Your first step is graduating from pharmacy school. But, generally just take your studies seriously and take your extracurricular activities very seriously as well. So.
Yep, and Dr. Emmanuel said, we need you. So with that, I'll actually have you guys give your information before I close out the podcast. Anyone can go. I know Dr. Conserve was saying that we can reach out to them so that people know where they can reach you, Dr. Conserve.
I can be reached at my email, which is dconservejr@gwu.edu. So that is DCONSERVEJR@gwu.edu. And if you Google my name, Donaldson Conserve, it might be easier. It might come up and you can see my work website at GW, and then use that to also find my email and any other information. So that might be another way to just get my information.
And you're on Instagram, I believe, your mentor.
Yes, so we have the Black Male Professors Instagram page. If you type Black Male Professors on Instagram, it will show up, as well as my personal page is Dr. Conserve JR at, just Dr. Conserve JR. Okay.
Dr. Emmanuel?
Yeah, you can email me. My email is emmanuvi2@gmail.com. emmanuvi2@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram. You can find me as Dr. Zeus, and that's a Dr_Zeus. If you type that in the search page, it will bring me up like Dr_Zeus. So yeah, you can reach out to me that way.
Okay, and take us home, Dr. Easterling.
Sure, I could be found on Instagram or Twitter at Dr. Torian, one word, DRTORIAN. For Young Doctors DC, you can find us on our webpage at yddc.org, or you can follow us on Twitter, Young Doctors DC, also.
Perfect, great, and this has been a phenomenal podcast episode, and I just want to thank each and every one of you gentlemen for being on this panel today. It's been very, inspiring, informative, and I think that we definitely making a difference, one step at a time. And I, dare to believe that maybe one person who was, contemplating whether or not they would even take that next step to make that difference, form that group, get, apply to that, whether pharmacy program, or maybe they didn't even have any mentors or anywhere to go to even get more information on being a physician, and just hearing the podcast today and having resources to do that, I'm sure has inspired some. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here today. And thank you everyone who was listening. I appreciate it. And please don't forget to go ahead and check other episodes as well when you finish listening to this. And also know that if you're listening on audio, there's definitely a video version of this on the YouTube channel at The Dynamic Doc. And as always, please make sure to stay safe, stay healthy, be blessed, and please stay tuned for next episodes. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks everyone on the panel.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.